Colonialism and urban change. In most parts of the Western world, modern cities emerged with industrialization. In Britain, industrial cities like Leeds and Manchester grew rapidly in the 19th and 20th centuries as more and more people sought jobs, housing, and other facilities in these places. However, unlike Europe, Indian cities did not expand as rapidly in the 19th century. In the late 18th century, Calcutta, Bombay, and Madras rose in importance as presidency cities. At the same time, a host of similar cities declined. Many towns manufacturing specialized goods also declined due to drop in the demand for what they produced. Old trading centers and ports could not survive when the flow of trade shifted to new centers. Similarly, centers of regional power collapsed when local rulers were defeated by the British and new centers of administration emerged. The process is described as de-urbanization. Cities such as Machilipatnam, Surat, and Seringamapatnam were de-urbanized during the 19th century. By the early 20th century, only 11% of the Indians were living in cities. Colonial architecture spanned 150 to 200 years. In the beginning, British built factories. Soon they went on to build schools, courts, municipal halls, and bungalows. Many buildings were adaptations of structures made by leading architects of the time. Early buildings used brick and limestones. Stones were used to build impressive structures to show imperial authority. New materials such as concrete, glass, and wrought iron were used later on. European styles were adapted to the Indian conditions. The style was a mixture of Hindu, Mughal, Afghani, and European elements. De-urbanization in the 19th century. The European phase of India's urban history has its beginning in the period during which Mughal supremacy was at their peak. The 19th century's urban scenario stands in contrast to the Mughal period of urban growth. The two main reasons for the decline of the cities during this period were, firstly, the lack of interest on the part of British in the prosperity and economic development of India, and secondly, the ushering of Industrial Revolution in England, altering the very complexion of urbanization in England and in India at a later stage. Trivia. In 1854, Lord Dalhousie, the then Governor-General of India, formulated a plan to construct a network of trunk lines connecting the principal regions of India. The decline of a large number of urban centers in India during 19th century was primarily due to the negative attitudes of the British towards the traditional industries of India, particularly the cotton textile industries. Silk and woolen textiles fared no better than the cotton weavers and spinners. A similar fate followed in other industries as well. By the end of the 19th century, England had emerged as a major industrial economy of the world, and India was the main market for the British goods. India's traditional urban centers, which depended on the export of its industrial products, declined rapidly as a consequence. Another factor contributing to the decline of urban centers of the pre-British period was the introduction of the network of railroads in India. By 1900, the rail network had been fully developed and were connected to all parts of the country. Every railway station became export point of raw materials, thus depriving some of the earlier trade centers with their monopoly in trade. Many trading points on the Ganga River, such as Mirzapur, lost their importance. Moreover, the ruin of the Indian handicrafts reflected in the ruin of towns and cities which were famous for their manufacturing activities. Agra, Surat, Lucknow, Dhaka, Indore, and Tanjore, etc. lost their previous glory. Some populous and flourishing industrial centers became depopulated. The decay of traditional industries did not accompany the growth of modern machine industries, as was the case in Britain and Western Europe. Consequently, the ruined handicraftsmen failed to find any alternative employment. Growth of towns under colonial rule. At many places in India, new towns developed to meet the needs of colonialism. The administrative centers ranged from the large presidency cities, Madras, Calcutta, and Bombay, to the towns around district headquarters. Towns also grew around residencies, as in Lucknow, Pune, and Hyderabad. With the introduction of railways, towns sprang up at important railway junctions like Mughal Sarai. Army cantonments set up to check foreign invasion, and internal revolts developed into townships like Danapur in Patna. British built towns in the hills where they could spend time away from the hot and the humid climate of plains. The hill stations were smaller homes away from homes, dotted with English architectural monuments such as a mall, a church, and central avenues. Hill stations were to serve as special spaces for the colonial masters and further emphasize the differences between Europeans and Indians. When the real hot weather set in, all of them would pack and move away to hill station. Of all the hill stations, Shimla is the most well known. It was from Shimla that British government conducted its affairs during the hot season of the year. Other hill stations are Nainital, Mussoorie, Darjeeling, and Ooty. They are popular tourist resorts even today. The tea and coffee plantations generated yet another type of settlement in the plains of Assam, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. These settlements were brought about by forced settlements of native laborers who were brought to clear away forest and work on the plantations. The plantation settlements were never very large in size but had distinct urban characteristics in order to provide comfort to the European owners. Differences between the old and new urban centers. Traditionally, Indian towns and cities were very well defined compact spaces, often enclosed with fort walls, surrounded by a deep moat. Hence, many of these cities were called walled cities. The walls and moats were meant to protect the city from invaders. The fort walls were usually thick and high. They had high gates called darwazas, which were meant for people to come in or go out of the cities. These doors were kept locked and were opened only on specific occasions. Each city was divided into thana or wards. They were further subdivided into mohallas. In 18th century, Delhi is said to have had 18 thanas and 600 mohallas. The administrative structure of urban areas was different from rural areas. In villages, panchayat system of administration was followed. The towns under the charge of kotwal with thanedars supervising the mohalladars and darogas. The architectural style introduced by the British was an expression of the political aspirations. The new towns and cities vastly differed from the old ones. The differences mainly pertain to the size, design, layout, population, and administration. Many of the new urban centers were much bigger than the older ones. The new cities had broad roads and open spaces in the form of lawns, parks, and playgrounds. These cities also had large public buildings. Government offices, markets, and clock towers appeared in all these cities. Many of these cities had cantonments built on the European plan where defense forces and their family resided. They were usually a little away from the main city. The cantonments normally had tree-lined avenues. Some of the cities of British period, such as Madras, had a white town where the British lived and a black town where the native population resided. Sometimes a wall separated the white town and black town. Many of the new cities grew by absorbing and acquiring neighboring villages. This is particularly true in case of Madras, which has steadily expanded by adding a string of adjoining villages. Madras got some villages as gifts from local kings, other villages were acquired by war. Many of these old villages constitute the main residential localities of the city now. The British slowly introduced new forms of administration in the new cities. Lord Cornwallis introduced a new code of regulations in 1793. Trivia. Delhi became the capital of India in 1911. It was planned by Edwin Lutyens and Sir Herbert Baker. Case study of an urban centre. Delhi. Capital cities were built at the site of Delhi on the western bank of river Yamuna for over more than 1,000 years. As the river shifted course, the location of the citadel was also shifted so as to be close to some dependable source of water. For example, the oldest surviving citadel, which Qutbuddin Aibak conquered from Chauhan Rajput, is in present-day Mehroli, far away from Shahjahanabad, the last citadel built before British rule. In 1638, Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan laid the foundation of Shahjahanabad, which we today call Old Delhi. The British called Old Delhi the walled city because it had a wall around it. Most of this wall no longer exists and only a few of the gates remain. The two most eye-catching buildings in Shahjahanabad are the Lal Killa, Red Fort, within which the Emperor's Palace is situated, and the Jama Masjid, one of the Asia's largest mosques. A wide road linked the Red Fort to the Lahori Gate in the western wall of the city. This road was called Chandni Chowk after a chowk, open space with a pool that reflected Chandni, moonlight. The road had fountains and shady trees, and along its length were bazaars bustling with economic activity. Another wide road ran from the north to the south of the city, separating the Red Fort and Jama Masjid. Shahjahanabad had numerous gardens, places of worship, educational institutions and mausoleums. Various sections of the people lived in close nearness. So, the Havelis of the nobles and wealthy people stood amidst the thatched mud houses of the poor artisans and craftsmen. All were packed together in crowded mohallas. Narrow lanes separated the houses. It is believed that the city of Delhi has been the site of 7 cities, one after the other, the present New Delhi being the 8th. Trivia. In 1911, capital of India was changed from Calcutta to Delhi. On 13th Feb 1931, it was officially done. Trivia. India Gate stands at the end of Rajpath. It was designed by Sir Edwin Lutyens. It was originally called All India War Memorial in memory of 90,000 soldiers of India who died in the First World War and Afghan Wars. In December 1911, the Coronation Darbar was held at Delhi. King George V announced the creation of a new capital, Delhi. The real motive behind the transfer of the capital was to leave Calcutta, which had become the centre of the freedom struggle. However, the reason given was that Delhi was centrally located and had a healthy climate. Sir Edwin Lutyens and Sir Herbert Baker were the two great architects who designed New Delhi. Lutyens and Baker had different but complementary vision. Lutyens sought to borrow from the architectural design of different countries, and Baker wanted to integrate local elements in his design. Lutyens realized that what was needed was a synthesis of Eastern and Western design. Thus, the Viceroy's Palace, Rashtrapati Bhavan, Council Member, Parliament House, North Block, South Block, India Gate, Connaught Place, and many other public buildings were built. In constructing government buildings, red and cream sandstones were most often used. The construction of the city was interrupted by the First World War. The city was finally inaugurated in the year 1931. Baker designed the Secretariat buildings that house important government offices. Lutyens designed the India Gate, the Parliament House, and the Viceroy's Palace. The India Gate is a majestic arch-shaped stone memorial built in the honor of Indian soldiers who were killed in the First World War. The Parliament House is a huge circular columned building. Our national parliament functions from this building. The Rashtrapati Bhavan is now the official residence of the President of India. It is located on a hill called Raisina Hill at one end of a long road called the Rajpath in the heart of New Delhi. Originally called the Viceroy's Palace, the Rashtrapati Bhavan was the residence of the British Viceroy of India till India became free in 1947. This huge palace-like building is a peculiar synthesis of the Islamic, Hindu and European architectural styles. Located in a huge campus of over 330 acres, the building has over 340 rooms. During the British days, over 2,000 servants looked after the building. In the recent decades, the city has undergone several changes that have changed its original character. Many old British period buildings have been either demolished or renovated. New commercial and residential buildings have been constructed to cater to the needs of ever-increasing population of the city. Heritage lovers are against such modern constructions because they diminish the beauty and historical value of the city. The continuous influx of people from the other parts of the country has made Delhi into the commercial capital of the present-day India. Trivia: the Mahabharata talks about a place called Indraprasth, the capital of the Pandavas, which was built on the site of a burnt-down forest called Khandavaprasth. Some believe that this city was located at Delhi and it's often associated with Purana Kila.